state-funded nonprofit organization. It lives at the University of Colorado at Denver. And it's the goal of the Pyramid Plus Center to increase the use of evidence-based, which is huge. You know, you will hear that term over and over and over again, which is a great thing. Evidence-based early childhood social, emotional, and inclusive practices in early care and education settings. And we want this to include family child care centers. And there is, in your handouts, it's actually the first handout in the back, handout 1.1. It's a graphic of the Pyramid Plus model, which I'm sure, although the people who are brand new might not recognize that yet, but even after today, you'll recognize that pyramid. So just a few of the Pyramid Plus Center goals. One of their major goals is to support state organization and interagency teams. You know, they really want to provide technical assistance. They want to provide trainings. So this can be a statewide approach. Like I said, Summit County has really worked hard to make it a community approach. And then, of course, they want to establish those rigorous evaluation systems, because without those evaluation systems, you know, we're not going to know whether it's working or not. So a few of the pivotal concepts to be aware of within Pyramid is that there are tiered approaches to promote you know, inclusion for all children, and I think that's something that is really, really important as a takeaway for today. You know, being inclusive. Whether a child has challenging behavior or not, we want them to be included. We want to be, you know, working with that child. Teaching to fidelity is also something really important within the Pyramid Plus training approach, and we'll learn more about fidelity in the upcoming slides. Sustainability is also something that's really important. You know, we want to train teachers, we want to get the communities working together with this pyramid work, but we want to sustain that. You know, we don't want to train it once and then have it die off. We want to scale up. We want to bring up the quality of early childhood settings that get set, whether it's in homes or centers. And then, again, evidence-based practices, which is something I know we've touched on, and again, we will in the future. So that word fidelity. This was something that I was very unfamiliar with before I started Pyramid. Fidelity implementation, by definition, is the extent to which an intervention is implemented in comparison to its intended design, which is, you know, pretty wordy. But, you know, it's really just the degree of exactness something is, you know, copied or reproduced. You know, this work is all evidence-based, so we want to repeat this work because we know that it works. Another important piece to fidelity is the tools of measurement. You know, we want to make sure that this is all working, and without measuring it, you know, we really can't tell that. Now, moving on to those evidence-based practices. So TAXI, is everyone familiar with TAXI? So TAXI is the Technical Assistance Center for Social Emotional Intervention. It's a great resource, and we'll touch on it in the future. But TAXI defines these evidence-based practices are interventions and supports that have research documenting their effectiveness. You know, it's not just one study that says this works, but there are there are multiple research studies that have similar outcomes. So just a few agencies that are represented on the state team. A lot of these might look similar to our state funders. The Department of Human Services, the CDE, the Colorado Department of Education, Qualistar, the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, who's actually coming to visit Summit County at the end of the month, which is great. Did you have something to add?
He's coming to our school. They're coming to our school.
Yeah, I know. You guys.
We're like all that old construction that we're trying to get done. It's kind of like away, so it's a little crazy.
A little bit crazy.
A little bit, yeah.
Do they think that the construction's going to be done before it
It's
gets
supposed to be done, so you know how construction goes. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, should be like this over here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope that gets done for you guys. You know, our office is right there, so.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully it'll get done.
It's been a while when you hear it.
Yeah, yeah. A few jackhammers and things like
All
that,
day,
but yeah, I bet it's tough for you guys. I wonder how nap time goes.
You make them tired, so.
Yeah.
You have to.
So another one of the things that I spoke about a little bit before was sustainability. You know, sustainability is so important due to this this work is evidence-based, it does work with children with challenging behaviors. We want to sustain this so we can scale up those early childhood settings. So this, the Pyramid Plus Center chose a tree as their model for sustainability. And I know it's a little bit hard to read, but it might be a little bit easier to read on your computers. But if you look a little more closely, the funders are at the bottom. The Pyramid Plus Center, which, like I said, is housed at the University of Colorado at Denver, is right above the roots, supporting everything else. And then below the branches, supporting those branches where you'll find the children and families, is the certified trainers and coaches. So, the most important thing to take away from here is that one builds on the other. You can't have successful children and families and, developing children and families without the funders, without the Pyramid Plus Center, without teachers like you who are getting the training. So this is just a quick little quote I wanted to read to you. Actually, is there anyone that would like to read it for us? You're probably going to get tired of listening to me talk.
Yes. Challenging behavior is often directly related to the view that challenging behavior is a child's response to lack of appropriate adult guidance. Another common perspective is that challenging behavior is an indicator that the child is willful and non-compliant, and that an appropriate response from the adult is to assert his or her authority over the child.
Awesome. Thank you, Shelley. So I know that's kind of a lot, especially in the morning, but what do you think about that quote? So let's take this. Oh, go ahead.
Especially the second half of that, I think the idea that there's, I'm trying to think of the word I want to use, that it's like the child's problem, they're willful, they're non-compliant, it's their problem. And the word authority is concerning to me in that viewpoint, because I think it denotes a lack of respect to the child as an autonomous individual human being.
And I think that's a huge takeaway from that word authority. When do you think it's okay to assert authority over a child? Do you think it's not okay ever?
When someone's in danger?
Aggressiveness, yes. Maybe you're gonna hurt somebody or,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think I know what you're saying. Possibly the safety of another
Yeah,
child
it's
is
I mean,
in jeopardy.
sometimes,
Or,
during even a pain situation, you don't say about an accident, but you see something about to happen. So I don't know.
I know that authority word, that struck me too. I thought that was just a little bit aggressive. Yeah, that's the word.
Well, I agree.
It sounds like you're being forced. It sounds forced.
Yeah. And I still, I don't know that I would even use the word authority,
No.
but I agree with your kind of thought around it. When it's a safety issue or danger, somebody could get seriously hurt, but I still don't think that I would use the word, that I would use authority over a child in that situation. I think I would intervene or respond immediately and quickly in something in that situation.
Effectively.
Yeah, I still don't think I would use the word authority, to describe what the response would look like.
No, I get what you're saying. I
It's such a
agree.
big word, it almost sounds like you're
Like
using
harsh.
force. Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
like, I just think of like police officer using authority or something to, it's just not, I don't like the word very well.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Well, I was going to add one more thing too. I think that the word authority for me too, I think what it implies is that I have all the knowledge and you're not capable.
Sure.
And I think that that's not correct.
I would agree with that as
Or
well.
because I'm the teacher, I have the right
Right.
to do this to you, but,
Cool. Thank you. So why is this work so important for our young children? The children here in Summit County, children in your own life. I actually meant to ask earlier, is anyone in this room a parent? No, I feel like, well, Catherine Rowe could say
Sorry.
that.
I'm a parent. I forget I'm a parent sometimes.
So, the facts tell us that this work is important because this work does work. Handout 1.3, if you scroll to the end of your handouts, and Maria, they might be a little bit different for you, sorry about that. But it's just a sheet with some prevalent to take a look at that for a moment or two.
What page?
Handout 1.3. Should be page 25. You know, there's lots of numbers and pages.
No, it's actually page 27.
So, you know what you guys should know, because this gets me hung up or used to with the pyramid. Your handouts, the first few pages of your handouts are just a copy of the PowerPoint. All of the handouts that Lacey's going to reference are past the PowerPoint. So you always have to scroll all the way past what you're seeing. I was just watching Shelly, like all the PowerPoint slides,
Okay.
and then you're going to see the first handout, 1.1 and 1.2 and so on. That can be confusing because there's also
no, I think you're right. Thank you.
there's actually also page numbers at the bottom of the PowerPoint, and then I think the page numbers might start over when the actual handouts that Lacey's going to be referencing begin. There's like a new set of page numbers, so it can be confusing.
Mm-hmm. And there have been, some updates and things like that. So, if a page number is off from what I said, let me know, and I will definitely make note of that so I can correct it. So was everyone able to find that handout? Okay. So some things that children with challenging behavior commonly experience, I'm sure on one level or another you guys have seen a lot of this. Things such as peer rejection, lack of community integration, a child isolating himself, predictable and consistent school failure, things of that nature. I mean, have people seen that before? I mean, it's great that we have so many years of experience in this room. That's awesome. So a few of those data points, I'll actually give you guys a second to read those over. And then on the next slide, there are actually a few more data points. And the second data point in this slide really stuck out to me. That preschool children are 3 times more likely to be expelled than kindergarten through 12th grade. I mean, I didn't know that before pyramid, and I thought that was a huge number. I mean, 3 times more likely, that's quite a bit. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And the next slide actually talks a little bit more about that expulsion rate. It talks about kind of the racial disparities in the earliest years of schooling.
Do you know what they were expelled for? Like, do they have to recognize the behavior?
No, I don't have exactly. That's an interesting question. Yeah.
Is it biting? Is it, I don't know.
Well, and that's a really interesting question because
I think that there's a real general statement made in that research about the child not being safe to themselves or others, which you can extrapolate from that, like a lot of aggression, but they don't specify specifically, but
just one. Yeah.
no, I think that's a really good question actually, because the question might be, well, does it differ to each center? Each teacher, they probably have different expectations.
Right.
So I think that's really interesting. And actually, on the next slide, not to skip over this one.
What are they expelling?
Yeah. The next slide, which I thought was really interesting, it kind of breaks it down by color, so it makes it very easy to see visually, the racial disparities and expulsions and things like that. And it's actually really great. This is the first year that you guys will have this graph in color, which I really think makes it easy to understand.
Yeah, that's a brand new
Yeah, this is
slide
brand new pyramid.
in this session.
I know, isn't that pretty?
Yeah, it's
nice
cool.
graph?
It's a nice visual.
That is alarming.
Gorgeous.
The other thing I just want to emphasize, because the stat that stands out to me in the few slides prior leading up to this one, is that children living in poverty are at much higher risk for exhibiting challenging behavior and hence being expelled. There's a number of risk factors that go along with children who live in poverty that sort of set them up right out of the get-go for being more at risk for this negative pattern of exhibiting challenging behavior if they don't have the right response by adults. Caring adults in their classroom or at home, it can be a negative cyclical pattern that actually feeds the challenging behavior that can really set them on this track for diagnoses like oppositional defiant disorder and a lot of struggles in 3rd grade and so on. So just know that those are the children we really want to pay a lot of attention to. and be giving a lot of support to build what we call their resiliency. And I hope that you're going to learn a lot, I think, throughout Pyramid about how to do that. But we want to pay special attention to those kids who are at risk. So anyway, sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you. Please always feel welcome to jump in. Kathleen's been doing this a long time, so having her here is pretty awesome. So this is the first year that since you guys have those zip drives, you have a much better view of that graph, which I think is really awesome. So that expulsion rate, it continues. These are just a few more data points from the below resource. The top one's just regarding students with disabilities. And I think the bottom one is really interesting because I think that's something that can really resonate with our community, as we do have a high percentage of, English as a second language, English learners. Does anyone want to read that second data point for me?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
English learners represent 12% of preschool children, 11% of students suspended once, and 9% of preschool students suspended more than once.
Does anyone agree that that can really, that can fit right along with our community? We really have a lot of, a high population of English as a second language.
Well, and I think too, what's interesting, because looking at the first data point and considering Catherine's comment about children in poverty, what we know too is that children with disabilities, there's a higher percentage of children with disabilities who also live in poverty, and we know there's a higher percentage of English language learners who live in poverty. And so I think that one of the commonalities I think that can add to the challenges for students with disabilities and English language learners is obviously the complication of communicating one's needs effectively. But I think the string and the commonality amongst all those groups of the impact of poverty, has to really be kept in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. The risk factors. Thank you. So that being said, there are some positive outcomes, using this work. Studies show us that those children enrolled in high quality early childhood education programs, whether it's a home or a center, either or, they're more likely to have positive outcomes, such as a higher education level, higher paying job, less likely to, end up in jail or something like that. So, I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys, I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but, helping these children now is going to benefit the world later. So a few direct positive outcomes when addressing these challenging behaviors, decrease with risk of withdrawal, aggression. That's another one of those pieces that if we can decrease any danger that a child with challenging behavior might put another child in, that's really important. Positive peer relationships, attachment to family, teachers, parents, people in their lives. Academic success, as well as reduced risk for teen pregnancy, which is another thing that's really important on a bigger scale. So moving on to the Pyramid Plus approach training curriculum, which is those 18 sessions and that pyramid model that I was talking about a little while ago. That pyramid model, so much of that comes from the TAXI and the sess1 website. So sess1 is the Center on the Social Emotional Competence for Early Learning, which I know is a mouthful. And TAXI, I know I said this earlier, but is Technical Assistance Center on Social Emotional Intervention. And all of these websites, as well as the Pyramid Model Consortium, you can go visit. Again, it's great having the zip drives because you can click right on it and it can take you to that, that website. There are also a couple handouts after the PowerPoints that are from those websites, such as a list of resources, a brochure that you're welcome to look at. It would be handouts 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, and 1.10 or 1.1, which is very much. So why don't we actually look at those